London. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 8 o'clock. From the world headquarters of GB News, this is Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Tonight, why is the right on the rise across the world? Is it time for net zero immigration? And how's Nigel getting on in the jungle? Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Your weekend starts here. Bring your own drinks. The admission is free. You're fired. There you go. On tonight's show, my Friday friends are fearless social commentator Precious Muir and Britain's last honest politician Philip Davies MP. Also, TV legend and former Crime Watch and Children in Need host Sue Cook. Live from Sydney, Australia, The Spectator's dropper of truth bombs, Alexandra Marshall, delving into toxic masculinity being taught in our schools. And King of the Jungle football icon Harry Redknapp. Plus, my Friday Big Opinion is on the way. It's a lively one. First, the news headlines and Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. As you've been hearing today, 13 Israeli hostages have been released by Hamas. They're back in Israel now. That's according to the Israel Defense Forces. The Israeli military says it's preparing for the next stage of the Gaza operation. These pictures show the hostages being transferred in Red Cross cars via the Rafah crossing. More aid is being allowed into Gaza, which is expected to continue over the coming days. There was also a further group of Thai hostages released by Hamas following separate mediation efforts by Egypt and Qatar. Those released today include 13 Israelis, some of whom are dual nationals, 10 Thai citizens and a Filipino national. A group of Israeli hostages are due to arrive at the Hatzerim air base soon. Qatar's foreign ministry says 39 Palestinian women and children have also been released from Israeli prisons as part of the deal. A temporary pause in fighting came into force this morning, which is expected to last for 4 days. Margaret Moses, Danielle Aloni, Amelia Aloni, Adina Moshe, Ohad Munda and Ruth Munda, just 6 of the Israeli hostages who've been released today. A full list of Israelis who've been freed has been released by the Prime Minister's office. They include 1 male and range in age from 85 to as young as just 5. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said, "We're committed to the return of all of our hostages," and the UK's Foreign Secretary Lord David Cameron's also said it's a huge relief to see hostages returned today. 34 people have been arrested after riots and violent scenes in Dublin yesterday. A clean-up was underway this morning in the city centre after cars were set alight and shops were looted. A number of police officers were also injured. The violence was sparked after 3 children and a woman were stabbed close to a school in the city yesterday. A 5-year-old girl is said to be in a serious condition. Oscar Pistorius will be freed from prison on parole in January, almost 11 years after killing his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp, on Valentine's Day in 2013. The former Paralympic champion, who's now 37, claimed that he fired the gun through a bathroom door after mistaking his partner for an intruder, saying he feared for his safety. He was initially jailed for 5 years, but an appeal saw him sent back for 6 years in 2016, less than half of the 15-year minimum term that had been sought by prosecutors. And Rishi Sunak's facing backlash from senior members of his own party after new figures revealed migration is at an all-time high. Reports suggest MPs are demanding action to reduce the number of people coming legally to the UK. Net migration peaked at 745,000 last year. That's a record high. Right, this is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying, play GB News. Now it's back to Mark.
Thanks, Tatiana. Happy Friday, one and all. Should Britain have a 5-year pause on immigration? Would net zero immigration even work? Also, is it now a crime to be a man? And is Nigel Farage smashing it in the jungle? All of that, plus much more on Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. Absolutely great hour to come. First, my Friday Big Opinion. What are the highlights of the winter season? Halloween? Bonfire night? The crowning glory event has got to be the Chancellor's autumn statement. This dreary non-event ran to several thousand words, but can be summed up in 2. We're broke. Who knew that shutting the country down for 3 years, closing once viable businesses and stopping healthy people from going to work would come at an economic price? I can't believe it. Who knew that literally paying people to stay at home so they could bake perfect banana bread, start a podcast, watch the whole of Netflix and find themselves cracking open their first bottle of Jacob's Creek at 3 in the afternoon might be not that great for the country's finances? But listen, raising the minimum wage and reducing national insurance for hard-working Brits is better than nothing. Plus, we'll avoid recession, unlike Germany, who must have had Brexit or something. With inflation down and growth up, you can safely say that Britain is through the worst of it. With the duty on alcohol more frozen than Sharon Osbourne's face, we can even afford to have a celebratory drinky this Friday night. So, bottoms up. But before you celebrate too fast, there is one thing. Legal migration into the country in the year ending June 2023 was 672,000 people. That's a city the size of Liverpool in a year. Now, I'd like to have the whole of Liverpool every year, don't get me wrong. You can't have too many Scousers. 672,000 Wayne Rooneys? Sign me up. You'd have to have a lot of Lady of the Night grannies to keep them entertained. But the reality is that net migration levels that add to the population by 1% in a single year is asking for trouble, and it doesn't make you a bad person for pointing that out. Britain is a global beacon of diversity and integration, but all of that is at risk alongside our national identity when vast numbers of people arrive on an annual basis, which is why I think we should employ a vast army of bouncers and turn Britain into the world's biggest nightclub with a strict one-in, one-out policy. And while they're at it, no trainers. You'll love this story. BBC News on Twitter has become the nation's favourite parody account as they tweet new historic research which says that black women were the most likely to be impacted by the bubonic plague. This is medieval Britain we're talking about, just in case you've tuned in. The alleged numbers are tiny, the scientific evidence is debatable, and the disease wiped out half of Europe. But why let the facts get in the way of the cult of victimhood? The best thing about this crazy story is that we can now add the plague to the growing list of things which we're told are racist. That list now includes mathematics, you heard me right, the countryside, and wait for it, I kid you not, air conditioning. Who knew? Even the name Black Death is racist. It's time to cancel all of those people from 800 years ago, and that'll show them. Last but not least, a lot of pearl-clutching in the media this week about the rise of right-wing politicians. Gosh, it's almost like mainstream politicians aren't listening to ordinary people. Perish the thought. They may not be my cup of tea, but the hard right are proving increasingly popular in Sweden, Germany, Italy, France and beyond. And the trend continued this week with the huge success of Geert Wilders in Holland and Javier Milei in Argentina. But being on the right doesn't seem to be the only thing these politicians have in common. They've got very unusual hair too. So let's take a look at the victorious Dutchman Wilders, rocking a very impressive mane. There you go. Donald Trump, eat your heart out. And how about the populist leader Javier Milei, who needs an appointment with Nicky Clark, like, urgently? If this trend of men with strange hair being swept to power continues, anything could happen. Please, God, no. Yeah, let's not get carried away. The country's got enough problems as it is. OK, folks, well, lots to get through, but I'm delighted to welcome Britain's last honest politician, Philip Davis MP. Philip, great to have you. Hot foot from central London, pounding the streets of the city to make it here through impossible traffic, I'm told.
Yes, I blame Sadiq Khan.
Yeah, well, that's not a low bar, isn't it? Can I just say, though, you're not sweating, you're glowing tonight.
Well, that's very kind of you to say so.
There you go. And the brilliant political and social commentator, Precious Muir. Precious, welcome to Friday Night Live.
Hi, Mark.
Precious, where do we start? Net migration, 672,000. Is that sustainable?
I don't think it is. To be honest, I have to say, obviously, my past generation, my family had to come here, right? And they obviously came here looking for a better life in the sense of making something of themselves. My dad came when he was 18 years old and he created his life that he has today, but he worked extremely hard. He also came here legally. So all this paperwork was here. He had documentation, he had a passport, he came on a plane. You know, all those things have to be accounted for, and he came and worked his way up in the company that he is in now. And so being successful and basically able to contribute to society, those are the key factors of what we should be looking into in regarding visa, allowing people to come over. I think that number is just not possible. I think it's just unbelievable to think that we could actually hold that many people.
Yes. Are you feeling the heat now on those Tory backbenches about this figure that emerged yesterday, Philip?
No, we're giving the heat. We're giving the heat to the government because these figures are completely unacceptable. They're unsustainable. I mean, where are these people going to be housed just on a practical level? There's enough housing for these people, let alone all the other strains it puts on public services and social cohesion and all the rest of it. It's completely unacceptable. And the government... absolutely. The government have to get this number down, and they have to get it down fast. OK. Listen, we talked about the autumn statement in My Big Opinion. Are you feeling richer? No, we're not feeling richer. Nobody is, and we're not feeling richer because of locking down the economy for 2 or 3 years. And all of those of us who voted against it and said it was completely nuts and it would have devastating economic consequences and were poo-pooed at the time by people like Matt Hancock, unfortunately, are now being proved correct. And so, I mean, it's no good the Labour Party banging on about how people are feeling poorer. They supported the lockdowns. In fact, they wanted them to go for even further. So that's the reason why everybody's feeling poorer. Now, hopefully, now we've got the other side of it, we need to cut taxes, and we need to cut those fast as well.
Are you not worried about spiking inflation, though? If you cut taxes, stimulates the economy, and then the enemy of inflation returns?
No, because the inflation's been caused by things like high energy prices and things like that. It's not been caused by a consumer boom. Far from it. Everybody's really struggling to pay their bills at the moment, so people need a bit of money to... They're hard-pressed at the moment. They need some support. It's not going to fuel inflation. It's energy prices and food prices that are fueling inflation, not a consumer boom.
I tell you what is going to boost the economy, though, if nothing else, Precious. Yeah. Black Friday. Have you been shopping?
I do not participate in Black Friday, no. The history of it at all, it doesn't sit well with me.
Well, it's an American idea, isn't it?
It's an American term. I lived there for 10 years, and I've found out the history behind Black Friday. But in all...
What is the history behind it?
Well, they say that it was part of... where the slavery would... I think it's like something to do with the slavery. I don't want to go too...
So Black Friday refers to black people?
It's kind of...
My goodness.
This is what we know as, like, obviously corporations and stuff use it as, this is when they're coming from the red to the black, right? This is why there's... But there is actually history behind it.
Crumbs. All right, so you're boycotting it?
I do not participate in Black Friday, no.
But there's value to be had in TK Maxx this weekend. And Amazon.
As a Yorkshireman, this is an important consideration. So, as it happens, I have been participating in Black Friday. In fact, Esther went crackers with
your lovely wife.
Yes, she got home tonight and found thrown over the wall loads of packaging, and which was my purchases. And I wasn't buying them as Christmas presents for the people. I was buying them shamelessly for myself.
Yeah, well...
I like a bargain.
You should be doing procurement in the NHS, frankly.
Well, I think anyone could do a better job than those who are currently...
So have you had any classic Black Friday purchases? Because my record is a Moschino silk shirt, which was £199, reduced to £12.99, purchased on the internet, right?
We can participate in Cyber Monday.
Well, we're waiting for my Cyber Monday.
Yes.
But
you should be doing defence procurement.
Well, I definitely should. I could buy some
good.
naval warships, let me tell you. But I purchased this thing, so it was £200 down to £12.99, absolute no-brainer. I put it on. It fit me like a glove. Very, very happy. It was only later when I discovered there was a Diamante dragon on the back of it.
Oh, lovely.
Which meant that I then, for all times, had to wear a jacket on top of it because I was far too embarrassed.
Still a bargain,
Yeah, but that's the price of Black Friday, isn't it? But there you go. Now, listen, we've had this amazing story, and it was on the BBC website, and it's research from the Museum of London suggesting that the individuals most likely to be impacted by the bubonic plague in the 1300s were black women in medieval London. I'm curious about that one, because this is a disease that wiped out half of Europe. Do you think this is wokery gone mad, Phil?
Absolute madness, isn't it? I mean, to try and get some kind of, ethnic...
angle.
To this is just bizarre. Even by the BBC standards, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, I mean,
how do they actually research that? Was there numbers? There's calculations? Well, how many women of colour were killed in this
They've looked at skeletons and they've made assumptions.
Right.
Yeah, but then they've also sort of made estimates, and they haven't said it's all about biology. It seems to be a grey area. Now, the Museum of London is a revered organisation. Yeah. I'm a big fan of it. They do great, great work, and I think they're working on a brand new HQ. A new site is on the way. But does this feel overly political to you, the idea that you're looking for sort of victimhood from the medieval age?
I think BBC are like, they're trying to get probably the minority vote. I don't know how or why.
I mean, are you concerned?
But it doesn't make sense to me why you would specifically say black women. So I don't know what the angle
in
is
medieval Britain. I can't imagine that there were huge numbers.
Well, obviously they were coming from Africa, but obviously it's not. It doesn't make sense as to why they're specifying this and making it a big thing on BBC.
No, I can't believe the disease was discriminated on the grounds of race. Can you?
Well, I think the idea was
exactly.
that conditions...
I think it was knocking everybody out.
I think it was just a clear round overall...
But listen, what do you think about this? I'm interested. I mean, is there a flip side to that, where you sort of look at structural racism and you see that it's impacting people's lives and indeed, quality of life, all the rest of it? Sadiq Khan was talking about how black Londoners were affected most by air pollution. Again, I couldn't quite understand that.
This is what I find very uncomfortable, is when they try to use people of colour as a way of targeting or selling a story, right? And it then doesn't become about the story, it then becomes about the race. And I think we need to stop doing that, because if you want somebody to listen to a message, a historical piece, just stick to the facts. The facts has got nothing to do with the woman's race. The fact that she was a woman who died is what is the story. The fact that they're targeting it to be black women doesn't make any sense. Why do we have to specify that?
It's quite sinister, because basically politicians use race as a weapon to stop any opponents from criticising the policy. So they say that, you know, the air quality targets, you know, people who are black or from a particular ethnic minority, and then anyone who thinks the policy to tackle air quality is rubbish is hamstrung from saying anything.
That's what I'm saying.
Because they'll be accused of, but you don't care about black people.
They weaponise.
It's actually sinister. It's not done accidentally. It's done deliberately.
Oh, of course.
Fascinating stuff. Well, listen, plenty more to come. Let me tell you that we're going to be asking why the right is on the rise across the world. A fascinating debate. Also, is large-scale mass immigration a threat to Britain's national security and public order, as we saw in Dublin last night? And is it right that Oscar Pistorius should get out of jail early for killing his girlfriend? I'll be asking TV legend, former Crime Watch presenter Sue Cook next.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Friday Night Live. Is Nigel smashing it on I'm a Celebrity? I'll be asking King of the Jungle, Harry Redknapp. And is it now a crime to be a man? But first, with tensions in Ireland growing over high levels of immigration leading to riots in Dublin last night following the stabbing of young children in the capital, is large-scale mass migration a threat to national security and public order? As the ONS yesterday released figures showing that 672,000 people entered the country, the UK, legally last year, not to mention illegal crossings. Might Britain face similar such unrest in the future? Let's speak to legendary TV and radio broadcaster, former host of the BBC Crime Watch programme, Sue Cook. Hi, Sue. What do you think about this? Do you think that these scenes we've seen are a concern?
I do, yes. Everything seems to be pointing now to the problems with migration. As you said, the Dublin events, the figures that were released yesterday, the Netherlands election result, everything is pointing to the fact that we're all, ordinary people are really worried about it now, and it's time governments did something about it. I mean, the UK, England rather, is the third most densely populated country in the world. I mean, we can't take any more people. I am not the least bit racist. I really don't think I am anyway. I haven't got a racist bone in my body. I take everybody as an individual. But we're having so many people. And what worries me, what gives me sleepless nights, is that so many of these guys in their 20s, 30s, early 40s are arriving without any papers, any documents. We don't know who they are, what their names are, or we don't seem to be able to follow up where they're going. They all seem to be holed up in hotels in different parts of the UK. You know, my nightmare is that they're all on WhatsApp talking to each other, planning things, goodness knows what. And maybe I'm just being paranoid, but it worries me a lot, and I think perhaps it worries quite a lot of people.
Most definitely. And the issue is not just that illegal migration, but the legal migration. If you take away the people who got fed up and left the country, it's 1.2 million people that entered Britain year ending June 2023. This is going to have a cultural impact too, isn't it, Sue?
Yeah, as I said, we're England's most densely populated, third most densely populated country in the world. But what worries me also is that it's getting overbalanced. So people are now forming their own ghettos and almost making us a minority in certain areas of the country. And that's not good social cohesion. That is not a recipe. That's not integration. You know, we want everybody to be integrated, living by the same rules and the same values. I'm not criticising anybody else's religion or values, but this is our country, and our values are the ones that need to be, integrated into. And I really worry that they're not now. And we're all going to feel like minorities in some areas.
And I think the public are going to seek a political answer, aren't they, Sue? It's the Conservatives who, back in 2010, said that they would get immigration levels, legal net migration, down to the tens of thousands. Well, it's approaching 1 million now. Labour don't look like they'll have a different approach. We're told the economy needs these people, but I think the public have had enough. Are you concerned that we'll see a rise in more sort of right-wing extremist politicians to fill the gap?
Well, that seems to be a pattern that's beginning to emerge. And also, I think the tinder is getting drier. And gradually, as has been demonstrated in Dublin, in fact, it wasn't really an immigration issue at all in Dublin, but it's become one, or people thought it was one, and that was the spark that lit the tinder. I think maybe it's a good thing if we all start having a voice and trying to tell the government, for goodness sake, pull your finger out and do something. No politician seems to have a proper strategy. They all talk the talk, but nobody seems to know how to walk the walk.
Stay with us, Sue. Let's bring in my pundits tonight, my Friday friends, Philip Davis, MP, and Precious Muir, political commentator. Precious, we've seen the rise of the right in Italy, Giorgia Meloni becoming Prime Minister, the popularity of the Front National in France under Le Pen, Marine Le Pen, whose father was a fascist. And, of course, where have we got? We've got Argentina this week, new president who's pretty anti-woke and pretty firmly to the right. And, of course, Holland as well. So the rise of the right, why is it happening?
Well, I think it's just because, obviously, we're all suffering at the moment with the same issues. And so we're all struggling or looking to each other to see if we all have the answers, and we don't. So this is why it's coming, up against in the entire parts of Europe, and now we're having to deal with the same issue. It's just that nobody has the answers and we don't know where to go from here.
Indeed. I think that many of my viewers don't feel heard, Philip, whether they're Labour or Tory supporters.
No, I think that's true, and I think, I mean, the rise of the right across the world is definitely linked to immigration. I mean, we've been immune from it slightly because of our first-past-the-post voting system, whereas other countries have PR, which makes it easier for them to get a foothold. But, you know, the mainstream politicians have got to get a grip of this issue because the public are not going to take it for much longer. I was slightly amazed that Sue ever worked for the BBC. She seems far too sensible to have ever worked for the BBC, to be perfectly honest.
Sue, let me ask you briefly about Oscar Pistorius. He murdered his girlfriend. He said it was an accident through the bathroom door. He got 13 and a half years. He's out after 11. Is this justice?
It seems so recent, doesn't it? It doesn't even seem like 11 years. I think he's got off a bit lightly, to be honest. I think he's got off quite lightly. And I think what worries me is the grieving time for the families. It's not long enough, really, for Reva's family. I think that's a worry. And I hope that from now on he'll be fairly low profile. I hope he's not going to turn into some kind of celebrity or anti-celebrity. And I hope he'll perhaps try and make something of the rest of his life. I wonder, you know, where he's going to go from here. And whether, you know, he'll ever be able to forget it. Maybe there'll be some retribution, you know, coming his way in other ways. I don't know.
Yeah, could be. Well, listen, Sue, we'll catch up soon. My thanks to TV legend Sue Cook. Coming up is Nigel Farage smashing it on I'm a Celebrity.
First of all, an apology. Along with many...
I won't be asking Jacob Rees-Mogg. I mean, he gets enough airtime as it is, but I like that. That was a little bit of a kind of sample. A little mixing desk in the gallery there on a Friday night. Do you know what I mean? That's the vibe. Yes, indeed. Harry Redknapp, King of the Jungle, with us before 9 o'clock. Also, is it a crime to be a man? Is masculinity really something to be ashamed of? What makes a real man? The answer will surprise you. We're debating that next.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's on your teeth. It's on your teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Happy Friday, one and all. Coming up is Nigel Farage smashing it on I'm a Celebrity. I'll be asking King of the Jungle, Harry Redknapp. But first, a report by the all-party parliamentary group on issues affecting men and boys say schools are going too far with their lessons about so-called toxic masculinity. With boys and young men suffering severe mental health issues, worse academic outcomes, and sadly topping the suicide league table, the group argue that a boy-positive school environment is needed to help close the gender attainment gap. And the report argues that toxic masculinity lessons and other initiatives are leaving people feeling like it's a crime to be a boy. So is there a war on men, and should it end? Let's head to Sydney, Australia, and the popular TV host at ADH TV in Australia, Spectator columnist Alexandra Marshall. Hi, Alex. Good to have you on the show. Do you think there is a war on men right now?
Of course there's a war on men, and I have to say, real women love real men. And at the moment we're being told that masculinity is toxic, and the only thing that's toxic in our society is toxic feminism, which has been telling us that, oh, you can't have masculine men, and the reason is strong men protect civilization, and the far left don't want strong men around when they host this social revolution of theirs, because they know if there are lots of strong men, they're not going to get very far with it. So our society has to stop telling men that they need to apologise for being boys. They have to apologise for their strength. Heaven forbid they're really good at a topic and excel. They're supposed to apologise for that because somehow that degrades women. This is a nonsense. We need to start celebrating men like we celebrate women and embracing the things that make men men, because there's nothing wrong with it. We're different, men and women, and that's totally fine.
So you think this war against men is planned, you think it's ideological, and you think it's political?
I think it's useful. I think it's encouraged, because when you tell men that they have to be weaker, that they have to let go of the things that made them the strength of our society before, that's feminism's way of trying to elevate women by degrading men. Now, that's not how you run a society. You elevate women by encouraging them, not by pushing down men. That's crazy. We should both be strong. We should both be allowed to flourish. And young boys in particular are being damaged by this ideology. And not only that, boys are growing up in an environment where not only they're being told they can't be men, but they're not being taught how to fail, because we've got this schooling system that says, oh, everyone gets a prize. So the first time they hear no is when they grow up in a relationship. So we've got very badly adjusted boys entering a world that seems to hate them. And no wonder we've got so many issues today.
Indeed, a toxic masculinity, Alexandra, has had its uses in the past, hasn't it? Including 2 world wars when men had to be brave and face down tyranny.
You know, I don't think there's anything toxic about the concept that men go into battle. That is not a toxic concept. That's a reality of the human race. We don't like the fact that humans go to war. Well, that's just tough because you don't like humans. Women go to battle as well when given half the chance. It's not a male feature. What is a male feature is strength and proficiency in war. And I don't think that the left have ever really gotten over that, because they've lost a lot of wars. Like, let's be honest, left-wing politics keeps losing to strong men in our government. So, look, I think we have to be really careful about the society we create, and we cannot keep pushing men down. It's giving us terrible problems. Like International Men's Day is not even recognised by the United Nations, which is crazy. What happened to egalitarianism? Like, we should be living in equality of sexes, and toxic femininity is really starting to dominate our society.
Indeed. Well, there is a strong man in the studio, Philip Davies, MP. Can we let's bring in Philip and Precious as well. Philip, you campaigned, I think, in something like 2015, 2016 for International Men's Day, didn't you?
I did. I campaigned for a debate in Parliament on International Men's Day. There'd been one for International Women's Day for years, but never one for International Men's Day. And I was laughed at, actually, about it. And I said, just because there's lots of men in Parliament doesn't mean to say that men's issues were debated in Parliament, such as, you know, sort of we have a much lower age expectancy, poor educational outcomes in schools, high rate of suicide, which you mentioned earlier, other health issues.
More likely to get attacked, be a victim of violent crime?
Yeah, but I mean, I do worry what goes on in some of our schools. On the one hand, you know, they're teaching about white privilege, and then they're talking about toxic masculinity, and actually it's white working-class boys who've got the worst outcome in schools. And I think if the school spent more time trying to deal with those poor educational outcomes and less time talking about toxic masculinity and white privilege, we might get somewhere.
However, Precious, there are concerns, aren't there, about some of the materials that young men and boys at school are looking at on the internet. So you've got Jordan Peterson, who's a controversial sort of psychotherapist and a political commentator. You've got Andrew Tate, who many think is a crazy sexist misogynist. So is there a case to answer for you know, how men are becoming these days? Are young men quite sexist?
No, I think it's an influence that they don't need as a part of growing up. And I feel that we need to be concerned, and definitely concerned about what the children are learning from outside of school and bringing it into school. So this is actually quite an interesting subject to discuss, because these are young men who want to grow up, obviously, to become grown adults. They're young boys looking for influence. They're going on social media. They're listening to people like Andrew Tate, and they're getting influence and saying the negative stuff in school. So I think this is where we need to stop this stuff from getting bigger and obviously being influenced, is those kind of things in social media. And the only way to do that is education. It is teaching these young boys what is right and what is wrong.
Before I come back to Alexandra,
the issue here.
Precious, tell us about, for those of my viewers and listeners that don't know about Andrew Tate, why is he such a problem in your view, his messaging?
I think his message is just negative. It's very negative.
What does he say?
He really puts down women. He makes women feel, or he's projecting this perception of women that we are less than men.
And the property of men?
And the property of men. We are basically less than men. We don't have the same equal rights. We shouldn't have the same equal rights. He uses them as, you know, it's just not a good message that he's sending out there. And there's a lot of young men watching him and thinking, this is the guy I want to be. Andrew Tate is an idol. They idolise him, they follow everything he does. I mean, when he left social media, got banned from social media, they found him somehow. Like, literally, he puts out the message that is very, very negative towards women. And he doesn't respect women. He doesn't respect the fact that we have rights, we should be able to speak and have an opinion. There is a lot of things about Andrew Tate that is very negative. And I think a lot of influencers like him are on social media who are influencing these young boys, and they are taking this into their real life, school and outside of school, and we need to actually have a preventative and have something in school to stop them from growing up and being like him.
Now, Alexandra, is there a reason why young men, boys, are flocking to the likes of Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate? Is it because they feel demonised and they seek identity, they seek approval?
Well, we've all sat down with the young boys in our family and friend circle and de-radicalised them from the Andrew Tates. The only reason that influencers like Tate are being able to have such an impact on young boys is because there's a void. The education system is failing young men. The parents are failing them, and they're not talking to them. And so they're being left with only TikTok to raise them, which is a disaster. And there's a lot of problems with TikTok raising a generation that go far beyond just Andrew Tate. And so what we have to do is make sure schools are filling this gap of giving boys something to achieve, telling them how to be rounded, good young men, and then they won't have to worry so much about social media. Social media is just feeling a failure in our society because we've stopped raising kids properly.
Indeed. I mean, here's the issue, Philip. If you create a society in which there are lots of political identity groups, all protected political identity groups, then there will be the fall guys, won't there? And in this case, it's blokes.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Look, I mean, I'm paid to be out of touch. I'm a politician. I don't really know this Andrew Tate character. He sounds deeply unpleasant, but I couldn't pick him out of a lineup, to be perfectly honest. But my point about this is we don't have to talk about toxic masculinity. I can't remember being taught about toxic masculinity at school. Surely school should be about just developing an ethos where basically you bring up, you know, people to be nice and people to be respectful to each other. You don't have to have lessons in toxic masculinity to do that.
I think when we have groups of young men, groups of young men outside of places and hanging out and creating small gangs, it does have to be spoken about. It really does.
Do you think it's worse? I mean, you're in the younger generation, Precious. Do you think it's worse among younger men than, say, chaps in their 40s and 50s?
Definitely. There is 13-year-olds to 17-year-olds hanging out on the streets, on the corners of the streets, creating little gangs and having no idea of direction or life direction or knowing right from wrong, because most of the time they're not being told what they should be or how they should be or how they should act. First of all, a young man should be at home. He shouldn't be on the streets hanging out in hoodies, creating chaos. This is where it needs to start, in school. Because if they're learning that at 12, 13, 14, 15, by 16, they won't be on the streets of London. They will be in their houses or doing something a little bit more productive.
Surely
no,
start
because
at
most
home
of the time, most of the hours of the day is at school. You're not at home 24 hours a day. You're at school. That is where you find who you are as a person, where you want to go in life. And school is a real big factor in these children's lives. And that's the important thing, is to have subjects like this.
Philip?
We didn't need them back in the day. Now we do.
School's important in bringing up children, but where you should start is with parents. Parental responsibility must be the #1 place where you start with the upbringing of any child. And if we end up in a society where we say, actually, it doesn't matter what the parent does or says, the state's going to do it in the education sector, that sends out a terrible message, I think, to parents. We should say to parents, being a parent is a responsible thing, and you've got to take responsibility for bringing up your children to be good people. You can't leave it to the state and the school education sector.
I think it's a team effort.
I agree with that. We've got to start with the parent.
All right, Alex, listen, I want your closing thoughts on this. We've talked about some of these figures on the internet, these influencers. There's also the elephant in the room, Alexandra, isn't there? Pornography, and this very much shapes the worldview of young boys and men.
Oh, I think that's been around since Roman times when they drew little things on the street toward their nearest thing. I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is we're teaching our children to be disagreeable adults by definition. Our teachers want them to be activists. They don't want them to achieve anything. I mean, when I went to school, which wasn't that long ago, 15 odd years ago, we were so busy trying to get high marks in maths, English, science, literature, history. We didn't have time to cause trouble. We weren't worried about these crazy influences. And we did have the internet. We had social media, but we wanted to achieve things, and our parents told us to go get a job as soon as we were at school. So we were working or we were learning, and we were achieving something. And this ideology of having all this time to take days off school to have a sickie and go and glue yourself to the street for climate, this kind of rubbish is why we are having these influencers getting so much traction with our young people. It's not just men who have issues. Girls have problems too. It's just that men display their issues by following people like Tate, and girls go off and pretend to have illnesses for clicks on TikTok. They're both wildly serious problems, and they're all caused by the destruction of our education system and the loss of a moral fabric in our society and the desire to achieve things rather than getting participation awards.
My thanks to Alexandra Marshall, who is a popular TV host at ADH TV in Australia. She's also a Spectator columnist. Thanks, Alex. We'll catch up soon. Have a great day. It's quite early in the morning there in Sydney. She's not even had her coffee. God bless her for that. Listen, is Nigel Farage smashing it on I'm a Celebrity? That's next. Lovely stuff. What a great debate. That was very... Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, let me tell you that Harry Redknapp is on his way. He's just trying to plug in the computer and get the internet going. You know what it's like. Yes, indeed, it's almost a week since GB News' very own Nigel Farage entered the jungle for I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Here are some highlights so far.
But this is what I was saying to you.
Apparently you're anti-immigrants. And
Who told you that?
Oh, the internet.
Oh, well, there we are, then. It must be true. Anti-immigrant, right? No. All I've said is we cannot go on with the numbers coming to Britain that are coming. Do you know why?
I'm one of the numbers.
I just see something I've never thought I'd see.
What have you seen now?
Bare ass.
I've seen it on the first day. Considering he's nearly 60, it ain't too bad.
He looks good, doesn't he?
There you go. Well, listen, how is he getting on, do we think? Is he smashing it or is it career suicide? We'll hear from King of the Jungle, Harry Redknapp, shortly. But Precious Muir, you've been glued to this show.
Oh, yeah.
How do you think Nigel's coming across?
Listen, I think he's coming across really well in the sense that he's doing the things that I would never do. I mean, this is literally a show hell on earth. Like, there is tasks that I would run a mile away from. I would pass out. I wouldn't actually get any of the stuff done, and everybody in the camp would hate me. It's just, I'm able to do Big Brother. I could do skating, dancing, you name it. But a bug? No, I'm out. This is...
And eating testicles and all of that?
That is never going to happen, Mark. That's never going to... So I really respect him in that sense. He's really going up for all the stuff that he's been put in front of, and he's just winning it, the crowd over, I think.
Now, what did you make about his ding-dong there with Nella Rose on the subject of immigration? She said, look, you hate me. Was that a fair thing of her to say?
I think it's not fair to say, because he doesn't know how she got here. He obviously is just saying overall the thing that we were discussing earlier. Like, it's a lot of people coming in and we literally don't have anywhere to house everyone. We can't even house the people that we have as British citizens who are living on the streets in tents. So how are we going to even have extra people come in? So the way she reacted was just uncalled for. I think she could have handled it in a better way. She could have said it in a better way. Said, hey, listen, my family or I came as an immigrant, and I'm here contributing to society, and I think that is kind of offensive in that way. But the way she came across was a little too too much, I think.
OK, Philip, I'll come to you in a second, but who better to speak to than legendary ex-footballer and former top manager in the Premier League and King of the Jungle, Harry Redknapp. Harry, great to see you. How do you think Nigel's getting on?
Yeah, he seems to be OK, doesn't he? You know, it's very difficult. He seems to have settled in OK, and yeah, I think he's got a big chance of being in there for quite a long time, actually. I think they'll keep him in and give him plenty of trials to do, but he seems to be coping OK.
You are a very resourceful person, Harry. You survived a career in football as a player and manager. Were there times when you struggled in the jungle?
It wasn't too bad, to be honest, for me. I had a good group of people there, and we all got on so well, so it was quite easy. There was no real... We didn't have many arguments at all, and everybody helped each other. So it was quite a good camp as far as And having never watched a programme before I went in, I really didn't have too much idea about what to do or what to expect. There are times it can be quite boring, and so you're quite happy to do a trial. It gets you out the camp for a few hours, and it breaks the day up. So, yeah, but no, we was OK. We all got on well, and it was still friends now, most of us. We all keep on a WhatsApp group, so it's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. When you're in the jungle, do you lose all sense of time, Harry?
Absolutely. We used to try to look at, when we went to do a trial, we tried to look at the watches of the guys that were taking us, you know. And after about 2 days, they realised we were miles away from the correct time. We'd be hours out, you know. And so we were trying to, but then they started covering their watches up and taping over them, so we couldn't actually see what the time was. So, yeah, you lose track of all time. You've got no idea, really. It's quite strange. It's bizarre, really, how it works.
Producer Maria, Harry, tells me that he's 10-1 to win. I know you like a flutter. Is that worth a bet? Is that a bet? Is that good value? 10-1 for Farage to win?
No, I don't think he'll win. I don't think he'll probably win it. I think that it's going to be interesting now with Frankie coming in, Frankie Dettori, and Tony Bellew is a great character. Tony Bellew as well. Two big sporting personalities. They're going to be interesting guys. So it'd be interesting to see how they go as well. It's wide open this year. I think to pick a winner is very difficult.
There you go. Nigel, just stay with us for a second, Harry. Let's bring in Philip and Precious on this one. Philip, briefly, if you can, how do you think it's going to work out for Nigel? I mean, has he put his foot in it yet?
No, Nigel's doing really well, to be perfectly honest. I think he's coming across really well. He's getting stuck in. Most times I switch on, he's naked. I'm not sure that's a positive or a negative. But no, I think he's coming across really well. He's getting stuck in. And I think, you know, he's coming across as what he is, which is a very likeable, engaging character.
Just like your good self. Harry, what a treat to have you on the show. We'll catch up soon. Love to Sandra and the family, and have a great weekend. My thanks to football legend Harry Redknapp. Thanks, Harry. All the best. Well, folks, we're out of time. There you go, switching off his webcam. Listen, Mark Dolan tonight, back tomorrow at 9 and Sunday at 9 as well. Back to 2 hours on a Sunday. So coming up this weekend, the best Prime Minister we never had, Anne Widdecombe, fearless, dropper of truth bombs, rock star Telegraph columnist Sherelle Jacobs, and fascinating guy, family values US presidential hopeful Dr. Taylor Marshall. After 9, the brilliant Patrick Christys. Patrick, what have you got for us?
Well, is it right for all of those Irish demonstrators yesterday to be called far-right? Is the real crime not what actually happened involving those kids and the other people who were the victims? I'll be talking about all of that. We're also going to be asking whether or not we've been betrayed over immigration. Are we raising a grievance generation of young people like Nella in I'm a Celeb? Talking of I'm a Celebrity, Kerry Katona joins me for an exclusive interview, and she drops some, well, very revealing stuff about Nigel Farage, so you won't want to miss that, and all of the headlines for tomorrow's papers as well.
Unmissable stuff, Patrick. Look forward. Thank you so much for watching Friday Night Live. Well done to the team the other side of the glass and to my brilliant Friday friends today. Really enjoyed your company. We'll do it all again in a week's time, but it is Mark Dolan tonight. Tomorrow from 9 and Sunday at 9, so I'll see you then. Take care.
Hello, welcome to the latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll be a cold start on Saturday morning, but it's going to be a sunny and dry day for most with some lighter winds. We've got high pressure in charge, bringing that dry weather to a lot of the country, but it is dragging in this northerly breeze, so that's why we've got quite such a cold start tomorrow morning. But through the rest of the evening, those winds will stay fairly brisk, particularly along the east coast, so still bringing a chilly feel here. A bit more cloud around here, though, so that'll hold hold the temperatures up a little along the east coast, but across the west it's a different story, as low as -6 degrees in some sheltered glens of Scotland and as low as -4 in rural areas of Wales too to start tomorrow morning. So a crisp and sunny start to the weekend. Plenty of sunshine through the day. The cloud will linger across some northern and eastern coasts, but for many of us it will be a dry day. They can't rule out the odd shower now and again across parts of Lincolnshire and Norfolk. Despite the sunshine, it will still feel fairly chilly, highs of 7 or 8 degrees at most, so you will want a couple of layers if you're out and about on Saturday. Through Sunday, it will be a chilly start in the east once again, but in the west, we're starting to see more unsettled weather arrive. A bit more rain arriving into parts of Wales and the south west, as well as Northern Ireland.